Well, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm so excited about having this call today. It's going to be an exciting call. I want you to put your first name in the chat for me, if you will. And like I just mentioned, we're giving away Doris Wood's books for anyone that puts their name in the chat that wants to receive the book. We will be doing that. And we'd also like to know what got you to listen to this podcast. We're interested in expanding the show quite a bit, and we would like to know how you got here. Well, before we get started, there we go. We're getting some more folks in. Before we get started with the official show, I wanted to share something with you. We had shared 4 links with you on the last show. I had been in direct selling compliance for years and not really understood these FTC guidelines. So what I did was I placed 4 of them on a sheet of paper for you with the links, and you'll be able to pull them down at your convenience. The FTC ads for business opportunities, how to detect deception, the FTC soliciting and paying for online reviews. These are all great guidelines. Well, I don't know about great, but they're guidelines that you can follow about the FTC. And Kevin, just chime in here. Are these guidelines laws?
No, they're not. They're really kind of policy statements that the FTC puts out, guidance documents to industry to help advertisers make sure that they don't misstep under the FTC Act. So no, to answer your question, and for example, the guidance that we're going to be talking about today, the one regarding endorsements and testimonials, and the very first section, explaining the purpose, the FTC goes into detail about that and says no, but it explains, principles. It explains where our head is, how we evaluate, endorsements and testimonials as to whether they do or they don't comply. So they're extremely helpful documents.
Great. That's what I thought, and I wanted to share them. So they're online. Patrick is going to put the handout in the chat or somewhere where you can grab that. And if you don't get it, just email me and I'll be happy to send it to you. But it's a real helpful guide that you'll be able to use. So we've got the 16 CFR Part 255 as well on the sheet. And that's the one we're going to be talking about quite a bit today. So send me an email at directsellingsolutions@gmail.com. And if you just put FTC pubs, I'll be able to send you that sheet. Now, we are going to be offering compliance training educational workshops. We've got one scheduled in August. We'll be sharing some more information about that. And basically, I'm shifting to a format where I'll be doing a lot more speaking, teaching, and writing. So compliance education is really my passion. I want to be more involved in that aspect of compliance. So we're going to spend as much time today discussing a case study, but I want you to think about your compliance efforts, your compliance training efforts, and you really should be spending some time on compliance at your meetings. So we encourage you to bring in one of the attorneys, bring in myself, have some compliance training at your annual events. It really will be helpful for you. And it's going to look good for the regulators. You want to be providing compliance training every chance you can. So please put in the comments if you have any questions. This show is actually being hosted by the Institute for Global Compliance, and we have information on that on the website. Membership is available. And the Institute is just now starting to grow in the direct selling vein. We're starting to get the word out. And the whole reason that I formed the Institute, Doris Wood and I put it together quite some time ago, was to establish access to affordable compliance training in direct selling. So we're ready to rock and roll. The direct selling show. Ooh, this is exciting. On today's show, we're going to be talking about a case study. Kevin and Brent are going to be answering questions throughout the show. So if you have questions, put them into the chat. Patrick will get them to me. What we're going to do today is provide you with 3 things to reduce testimonial regulatory risk. And I'm also going to tell you a quick story about a company that didn't listen to the rules. So this is all about the ROI on compliance, playing by the rules pays. So we're excited to have an industry icon with us today, an industry icon networker. And I'm so thrilled to have recently met him and been able to learn more about what he's been up to. And he's a fascinating man. So you're going to hear all about Kevin, Brent, and John today. Now, who knows what the FTC is going to do next? I wish we had a crystal ball, but we don't. I don't mean to get people concerned, but it's time to start building up your defenses and do what Neora did. Put your compliance guidelines, put your compliance policies, your SOPs all in place so you have your information in order. You know, one of my favorite sentences is, when a crisis arrives, it's just too late for preparedness. So what does that mean? It means get your poop together before it hits the fan. You've got to do that in compliance. So we also have the attorneys here to answer any questions you might have. So burning questions, just put them in the chat. And before we get started, I've had a couple of people say, who are you? I forgot to introduce myself on the last few podcasts, so I'm just going to give you a quick Reader's Digest condensed. You do know me as, oops, where are we going? You do know me as the Queen of Compliance. I'm a writer, speaker, and compliance expert in the industry with over, gosh, since 1991. I don't even want to say that out loud, but I don't want to seem all high and mighty about being the queen. I just want to help companies. I want to help the company owners, the founders, the distributors, the customers. Those are the people I want to help. Real quick, Italian family. My father was a criminal lawyer. I think that's why I got involved in the whole legal thing. And I was bitten by the direct selling bug back when Amway was around. I was 18 years old and joined 3 times so I could draw the circles. And heaven forbid they wouldn't let me draw the circles. They wanted me to provide coffee. I just couldn't do it. Anyway, I went on and in 1991 started solo consulting to the direct selling industry. I worked with Kevin a bit. In the beginning, I worked with Jerry Nura and Ted Lindauer, a voice from the past, that's for sure. So I love direct selling. I think it's the greatest form of distribution in the world. So that gives you a little bit of background on myself. And I want to thank our sponsor, Thompson Burton Law Firm, with offices in Nashville, Franklin, and recently Huntsville, Alabama. The firm has 42 lawyers, 4,100 cases won, and over 2,700 happy clients. So thank you, Kevin Thompson. Bottom line, if you have any needs, he's there to help you. And all of those attorneys are there too. Kevin Grimes is in the firm as well. So let's take this off and get into our questions. Will be provided by Patrick, and we're going to join us regularly, invite other people in the direct selling vein to join us as well. Okay, what we're going to do now is get into our introductions real quick. Kevin Grimes, maybe you saw him on the wildly popular direct selling show we did on the FTC and the Penalty Offense Authority. Oh, it was a hopping show. People were just jumping in left and right. It was happening. So visit Direct Selling Solutions YouTube channel, and you can get the 16 previous shows that we've done. One of the most thrilling shows we did was on income disclosure statements. That was just a joy. So as I've mentioned, we've had Kevin Thompson on the show before. We've had all kinds of guests on the show before, and we're going to have a lot more people coming through. So if you know somebody that would be a great show host, let us know. All right. Well, allow me to shift into our introductions. None of these 3 people need an introduction, but I'm going to do it because they're very special gentlemen in the direct selling industry. And I want for them to be recognized for their contribution of time today and to the direct selling industry. These 3 gentlemen work hard every day in direct sales, and we really should recognize them. So if you're on the chat and you want to give them a big hello, you can put a 1 in there and send them a greeting. Let me start with Kevin. I've known him the longest, over 30 years. My gosh. Kevin is not only an exceptional lawyer, but an exceptional person. I've said this before on the phone. on my introductions of him. He loves the Lord with all his heart, and he is a perfect example of it. He is just a walking example of God in action. Kevin's heart is bigger than Texas. He's actually fostered over 35 children, and he has adopted 4. And you'll agree with me once you get to know Kevin Grimes that those kids hit the jackpot when they got him for a father. So, Kevin, thank you for being here. Let me tell you, his resume includes the who's who of direct selling from 1990. He shared his vast knowledge of FDA, FTC, and MLM law for over 32 years with 1,500 clients. And he was a distributor first. That's what I love about it. So thank you, Kevin, for making room on your calendar for us always. And he does represent the Thomas Burton Law Firm. Now, let me ask you real quick, Kevin, what drew you to this aspect of practicing law?
Well, it was actually, I got recruited to start the legal department at Melaleuca 32 years ago. And yeah, so that was an incredible opportunity, incredible, segue into be able to doing what I'm doing now. It was, I'd be curious to hear what Brent thinks, but I mean, it's really been a fun area of law, getting to touch upon, the many diverse areas of law that impact the typical direct selling company. It's an incredibly entrepreneurial environment, and it's got a lot of fun people in it too. So that's what initially drew me there, but that's also what's kept me in this practice arena.
Well, we're glad you stayed there. We appreciate you very much. And we want to ask you what encourages you about the industry too at some point here today. We're going to want to get to that because I want to hear some positive things about encouragement about this industry. So let me talk about Brent Kugler. Brent is a partner at Sheaf and Stone, and we're blessed to have him here today. Brent is a seasoned trial lawyer with 29 years of experience in the direct selling industry. He works in direct selling, MLM, and network marketing industries. His service include handling lawsuits, arbitrations, regulatory matters across the United States. And he was also an in-house. So maybe that's the start of getting involved with direct selling. Maybe you don't grow up and decide to be a direct selling attorney when you're 6 years old. That might be the story. Brent is now preparing companies for litigation, and he spends about 2/3 of his time consulting on the MLM side. He's a family man with 2 daughters that he's very proud of. One of his daughters just graduated from U of Texas as an interior designer. And what does the other one do? I didn't get that written down, Brent. What does the other daughter do?
The older one lives in Charleston, South Carolina, and does digital marketing.
Digital marketing.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Well, Brent enjoys golfing. He hasn't gotten on the master's course yet. So if you know anybody that's going to get him on there, and his best fun thing is looking for beaches around the Caribbean, white sandy beaches. I love that. So why did you choose MLM for your practice?
Well, I was thinking about that, listening to Kevin's answer. I went to work in-house for one of the law firm I was at's clients at the time, which was Advocare. And the Advocare general counsel retired and somehow talked me into taking her job. So the next thing I knew, I was working in an MLM, and I'm sure still to this day, not sure how she convinced me to do it. But what stuck with me was the first convention I went to. And, I'm the lawyer, so I didn't really have anything to do at the convention other than walk around and meet people. But I watched, they had what was called a Rising Stars segment of their program, which was not the really successful distributors. It was the people who were just starting out but had achieved that initial bit of success. And just listening to them talk about how that little bit of success changed their lives, being able to pay a car off or, get their kids out of daycare so they could stay home with their kids. That stuck with me. I was like, this is a pretty special industry.
It is special. I think so. All right. Well, thank you for being here. Patrick, I was going to ask you to put Kevin and Brent's email and John's email up there, but I just realized I didn't send you the sheets. So if you gentlemen can put your email in the chat for folks that might want to know how to reach you, we would like to have that in the chat box. All right, now we have a very special guest today. I am so excited about this. I have with us Mr. John Altschuler, an extraordinary networker and educator. He is an incredible pillar of support. I have to say that for the direct selling industry, because talking to him, he helps people whether they're in his organization or not. He helps people that are in his company or not. So he is a real icon in the industry. Got started in prepaid legal. I'm going to ask him a little bit about some of this. First exposure maybe wasn't so good, but in 1995, he got to focus his attention on Excel telecommunications, and he was able to rise to leadership in that organization. He also invents training games. He has an MLM training board game that I can't wait to see. Also, he left telecom and got involved in the health industry. And I think that's really where his focus and his attention has been. He loves the health industry, wanted to be a doctor. I think John, wasn't your father a doctor?
He was a doctor indeed.
He was, and he stays clear on compliance. He teaches compliance in his trainings. And Kevin, you'll love this. When John said this to me yesterday, I said, oh my gosh, wait till Kevin hears this. You know what he calls the compliance department? The sales prevention department. Your favorite term for the compliance department. So
I've been accused of that a few times, Brent perhaps, but yeah, I certainly have.
Yes.
John has seen everything. He's seen them start up. He's seen them raise with hyper growth. He's seen a lot of things. So he's a very important icon in the industry. He's a veteran in the Army. He sang opera in college. That's impressive. And like I said, he wanted to be a doctor. His dad was a doctor, and maybe he can share with us a little bit about that. And what also, John, you have a past in another lifetime as a stockbroker and a mortgage broker and all kinds of interesting background. So tell us, what's the most fascinating thing, John, that you've ever done? I have to hear.
Most fascinating thing. Wow, that's a pretty wild question. You know, I don't know. I don't know that it's one thing. I think that you know, I find ways to express myself, that which, you know, draws in my passion. I have to experience that. So I believe that if we're not living on the edge, chances are we're taking up too much space. So I work with that. You know, I think network marketing and direct sales has given me some of the most tremendous gifts, also some of the biggest frustrations, and some of the largest growth opportunities. And I think that if I were to kind of typify the things that interest me, it would be that which can give me more growth as a human being. And this is just a great playground for that. So I think I've gathered a lot from a lot of different places. What I would say is that, and I don't normally sound like this, so I'm a little lower in the register this morning than normal, but you know, the years that I've been in this industry, I've just learned so much about people and about relationships, and just figuring out how to be our most authentic selves with a way that benefit the people around us. So I think that's my target.
Fantastic. And John is also married 34 years, 2 daughters. Tell me about your 2 daughters, John.
I have a daughter who is a NICU nurse in Dallas, Texas. She works at Baylor Hospital. She just got married about 3 weeks ago. So grandkids on the way, I hope. And my older daughter is a social emotional learning counselor at a middle school in California. She got her master's at Pepperdine, and I'm just super proud. I'm about the proudest dad out there. But I will say this, Kevin, I've heard about your stories. I got to hear them all a number of times, actually, and just very, very impressive. So I've had interactions with Kevin and with Brent. Respect you both tremendously. And Joy, I have to say, or Donna, I have to say, you put the word joy and compliance in the same sentence. And I don't know that those things can coexist.
I hope they can. That's my favorite word, joy. All right. And now John is living in Colorado. What part of Colorado are you in, John?
I'm in the Castle Rock area. I'm up in the foothills. It's actually a little town called Larkspur, just kind of out of the way of the hubbub. And thank God for the industry of direct sales. I don't have to drive anywhere on a daily basis. The traffic is from my bedroom to my office, and occasionally I make a rest stop at the espresso machine.
There you go. There you go. And the dream is to own a horse ranch, I understand. That's an exciting.
That is my goal, a horse ranch.
So
Absolutely.
let's get into this. Now, he was retired. John was retired for a year, got a call from a friend, introduced him to a current company, and now he's moving and shaking again, not retired, and he is definitely a full-time networker. So let's talk about what one of his fellow distributors said about him. He said that he has the patience of Job and the insights of an eagle. I like that. So I'm considering myself really privileged and honored to have you all on the show. We're going to get started with our ROI of compliance. It pays to play by the rules. So let's go to Kevin first and ask him what he thinks about that title. Does it pay to play by the rules?
Well, it certainly does in the long run. Lack of compliance, can produce some, pretty outstanding numbers and profits initially, but as so many marketers, in and even outside of the direct selling industry have found, it's not a long-term play. So if you want to be a legacy company, yeah, you absolutely have to play by the rules. And I think the long-term ROI for doing so is absolutely outstanding.
Great. Brent, what do you think a good ROI on compliance is? How do we measure that?
Well, it's an ongoing process, and Kevin alluded to this earlier, and it probably is one of the reasons Kevin and I have been in this doing what we do for as long as we have, because there's the law, there's what the FTC says the law is, and both of those things change in this area over time. So what we would say was compliant 10, 15 years ago may not be so today. And today's FTC, after the New York case, is kind of like a wounded animal. The next target or the next company that the FTC targets is going to face a different litigation strategy from the FTC. So what's attractive to me in this space is, the challenges are always coming and they're always new. We're not just reinventing the wheel with every situation. It's an evolving regulatory climate, and it is absolutely necessary for companies to stay on top with the current regulatory trends.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the pay the piper now or pay the piper later. And I used to hate to say that to owners, but they didn't get it when you would say, how much is your budget for compliance? And they would say, we don't have a compliance department. So it's interesting to see, like Kevin was saying, a legacy company needs to have play by the rules, or they're not going to be a legacy company for long, or they could be challenged regulatorily. Okay, so what's the biggest misconception about compliance? What do you think, Kevin, is the misconception about compliance from owners that think they don't have to play by the rules?
Well, when it comes to, I would say probably the biggest, and it certainly dovetails with endorsements and testimonials, is just their absence of substantiation. And I'm very curious as to what Brent's experience has been also. So it's invariably the attorneys who are raising that question. I'll review a flyer, I'll review a web page for a product. A number of claims are made. Great. Okay. Do you have substantiation for these claims? I kind of get this deer in the headlights look back. Substantiation? What do you mean? And I said, well, the FTC defines that as competent, reliable scientific evidence. Again, the deer in the headlights look persists. And I'll say, well, and competent, reliable scientific evidence is defined as, tests, studies, clinical trials conducted by qualified professionals to yield results generally accepted within the industry, profession, blah, 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 et cetera. And usually, a lot of times I'll get, kind of we'll get back to you on that. But it's a problem. Now, part of the problem is it's always the lawyers who are raising it, but substantiation is first and foremost, and by far, a scientific issue, far more than it is a legal issue. I don't have a scientific background, so I don't have the qualifications to be able to opine as to whether or not, a piece of evidence, a clinical study, a trial, whatever, meets the standard for substantiation. But it's a big deal because, bottom line is, if companies are making safety or efficacy claims regarding their products, they've got to be adequately substantiated. Now, what that means, well, I guess we'll dive into that a little bit more, but I'll hand that off to Brent as to his thoughts.
Brent?
If you're asking me about misconceptions with compliance, I have a longtime client that after about 10 years stopped introducing me as their business prevention specialist.
Oh,
We are not trying to prevent you from being successful in business. We're trying to help you protect the opportunity you have for your sales force. So that's one misconception, that we are anti-success or just trying to tell you you can't do things. No, we want to help you do things the right way. And Kevin's point is spot on. The legal standard is really a scientific standard that us lawyers can tell you what that is, but we are not the ones to tell you whether your testing meets that standard or not. Just that you need to have it. Anecdotal evidence, even though it's 100% accurate, you lost 10 pounds or you had this result, that's not going to fly with the FTC, even if it's 100% true.
and one thing I learned, is this right, Kevin, that they have to have the substantiation in their hot little hands before they make the claim?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Marketers must possess the substantiation before they start making the claim that triggers the need for the substantiation. Decades of case law have made very clear that the FTC and the federal courts are absolutely free to disregard after acquired substantiation. They don't always do that, but they certainly can. And the FTC usually will.
Thank you. All this is to build up to our case study. This is information we want you to have. And now we're going to get into John and the case study that we brought before you today. John, let's get into it and tell them about the company.
Okay.
Started in February, March with a sneak peek, I understand. And
Yeah.
then launching at the end of October. Tell us a little bit about it. I know you went from 0 to 11,000 in a pretty short period of time.
Yeah, I mean, customers and partners combined. And I mean, there's so many aspects to unpack here. And I will say that in 2023, the product was kind of put into a test market parameter. And then in late January, February, the product went into kind of a sneak peek. And it was just kind of getting people warmed up to the idea, kind of seeing where the trend lines might take us. And then in May, we went into kind of a pre-launch, and we're focused to be launched and have things really buttoned down by October of 24. So you know how it is with these companies. Sometimes the companies will test a market, see what kind of traction they're going to get, and then they kind of assemble the team. We're a little bit in a different situation because we're coming into a company that's very well organized and has a lot of things really on the ball. So I'm certainly excited about what we have, but I will say this, that from a compliance standpoint, we're in an entrepreneurial environment. People want to say as much as they can say, because they want to move the person on the other side of that phone call, on the other side of the Zoom. And so this is like, the more efficacious your product is the more risk you're in, And so I think there's a lot of different, strategies and certainly questions that I have, because this appears to me to be kind of an industry where we really do have to split hairs. We really do. So we want to know exactly where the line is and how do we get right up to it. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to be right on top of the line. I'd like to stay away from the other side, but as a marketer, I want to go all the way up to the line.
Great. We've talked a little bit about the product. Now let's talk about the ownership, because I like to look at the product, the ownership, the training, the comp plan. We're not going to get into all of those because we want to get into the claims and what you can and can't say.
Right.
John, you want to tell us about the leadership? I know you've got plenty of money, but the leadership is so unique.
Yeah, it is. And I think that one of the things to recognize regarding our product, as an example, it falls into the category of hydration. What we're promoting, the message that we're providing to the marketplace is we want to help people hydrate their bodies. And hydration, I mean, that in and of itself is worthy of a discussion, because how technical or medical is that exact term? And one of the things I've learned about compliance is there might be a term that I would thought, well, that's just another word in the English vocabulary, and it's not. And what does that actually mean? So our target is intracellular hydration, hydration at a different level than just consuming a glass of water. So I will say this, that there's a definition for what water is, and we go past that definition. So we are not water per se. We are a rapid hydration or functional hydration beverage because there is a very specific target, and we add some things to the product that are over and above what you would put in water. So if you picked up a bottle of water, what you'd see on the back of that ingredient would say minerals or electrolytes added for taste. It can stay within the realm of water. But when you add more ingredients than what would be there for taste, now you've created something different. So we are a functional hydration beverage. So that's one of the distinguishing things on the product side. From the company side, we have an owner that has been in the market for a number of years. His name is Manoj. He started a company called 5 Hour Energy over 20 years ago. He's had enormous success in the market. He still controls 92% of the energy focused drink sector. And so he certainly brings a lot of experience in that realm, but we're now talking about independent distributors. We're talking about, network marketing. So what do we know about Manoj? Well, he has a great infrastructure. He has 15 attorneys on staff. The question I want to get into obviously is being reactive, being defensive, monitoring. Are we in an offensive position as it comes to preparedness, that type of thing. So I think that the leadership certainly, Manoj, the owner of the company, has his base of experience. We've brought people in that have direct sales network marketing experience, and we're kind of combining these teams to ultimately have the A team from an entrepreneur. And we have the backing, so if your owner is a billionaire, then, you're not going to run out of money, but that doesn't necessarily fix every problem. So, we have processes that we want to hone and make sure that we can not just be good for the long term for the company, because someone like Manoj will find his way through no matter what, but we want to secure the opportunity for a partner, for somebody who's looking for this to be, longevity income.
And we talked about the majority of the population doesn't get enough hydration. So we talked about that and the word dehydrated, and we want to dissect that quite a bit too. Kevin, the product is intracellular hydration, functional hydration beverage. I like that. Where do we go with that? What's the lowdown on talking about that type of a product?
Yeah, sure. Well, with a product like this, we've got two big federal agencies that are interested in the types of claims, the FTC, obviously, but the FDA as well. The FDA regulates is interested in the nature of the claim. Is a claim that's made for an FDA regulated product like a food, a dietary supplement, a cosmetic, drug, a device, is it appropriate for the category of product? The FTC couldn't care less about that. The FTC doesn't care if a marketer is making drug claims for a non-drug product. Their issue is, hey, whatever claims are made, are they adequately substantiated? So actually, just out of the box, there's an issue on the FDA side, which is, hey, are intracellular hydration claims appropriate for a conventional beverage? And the FDA not only, does it have some guidance on this, but there's actually some federal case law on this. And so the act, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, defines what constitutes a drug, a food, et cetera. A drug is defined in part as articles intended for use in the diagnosis, cure, treatment, prevention of disease in man or animals. But also as articles intended to affect the structure or function of the body. Now, foods and dietary supplements are exempted from that. And thank goodness for 1994, Senator Orrin Hatch, who helped get enacted the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, the SHEA, because it opened up the ability of marketers to make an incredible amount of claims about dietary supplements. But it doesn't do anything for conventional foods. So, you know, one issue, the product, John, that you described, is it a dietary supplement? Is it conventional food? The FDA actually has a guidance document with respect to beverages to determine whether or not, yeah, is this, you know, from a regulatory perspective, conventional beverage or dietary supplement. That's that initial determination. The status of the product is massively significant with respect to the claims that can be made, because with dietary supplements, certainly, you know, hydrating cells is an absolutely appropriate structure function claim for a dietary supplement. It is not appropriate for a conventional food. In fact, the case law is such and the guidance from the FDA is such that, you know, basically the only structure function claims that can be made for conventional foods are claims that relate to taste, aroma, or nutritive value. So that's an issue. And then, yeah, you know, I'll let Brent address, you know, the FTC's issues, you know, with respect to substantiation of those claims.
So one question for you really quickly. How do you define a conventional beverage, or that where you're talking that if you're outside, if you're doing something other than the structure function claims, is that the other side of the equation? Conventional beverage. I just wanted to understand that definition.
Yeah. So yeah, no, that's exactly right. Let me pull up my little. Well, it's the FDA's guidance document for distinguishing liquid dietary supplements from beverages. And so they look at a number of things like serving size. You know, for example, 5 Hour Energy comes in a little teeny tiny, I don't know what it is, 1 ounce, 2 ounce, whatever. It's certainly not a conventional beverage serving size like an 8-ounce can or a 12-ounce can. That's, in fact, they've got a list of factors here, and I apologize that I don't have them all memorized. Yeah, okay, you know, product name, product packaging, serving size, recommended daily intake, recommendations and directions for use, marketing practices, composition. Yeah, so those are some of the different factors that the agency is going to look at. But you know, we're getting a little far afield from substantiation, but it's you know, it's something that I'd suggest that the company may want to have some conversations with the FDA about, just to, you know, get some buy-in or get some guidance about where the agency's head is on this. I think it would behoove the company to market it as a dietary supplement. Given its serving size, that may be a bit of a tough sell to the FDA, but again, it's worth having a conversation.
John, do you want to tell them about the serving size? Because I think, Kevin, are you thinking it's a little serving size?
No, I'm thinking it's a 12-ounce can.
It's a can. Okay.
Because I've got several of them.
Oh, okay, great. Fantastic. Yeah. Brent, what do you think about the wait, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Here it is, functional hydration beverage.
Well, Kevin's making a good point here. Is you can have a product where you're making advertising claims that are compliant with the FTC guide, but could still be run afoul of the FDA regulations that Kevin mentioned. So, you know, we're talking about two different issues, and with a product like this, you've got to pay attention to both sets of rules, because compliance with one does not necessarily mean you're out of the woods.
Okay. Well, let's look at hydration versus dehydration. John, you've got a lot of questions, so I want you to start asking and have this conversation, because we had the conversation, so I want you to have it with them.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes up for me, just like with all products in our direct selling space, and it's just, you know, and just for the record, it seems for me very unfair that the regulatory authorities go after, you know, the network marketing arena in one way and the rest of the market in another way. But that's reality, and I don't think that's going to change, at least not based on my recommendation. So that being said, so here's a couple of facts, okay? The effects of chronic dehydration includes things like kidney stones, kidney disease, urinary tract infections, constipation, digestive issues, chronic fatigue, joint pain, skin problems, heat injury, headaches and migraines, high blood pressure, electrolyte imbalances, cognitive impairment, mood swings, irritability, weakness of the immune system, chronic bad breath, poor athletic performance, and the list goes on, okay? So the point is, these are things that are well documented out in the medical space, whether we're looking at just a variety of clinical data, anything from PubMed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are very, very well documented. So these are the issues with dehydration. Obviously, it would be problematic for someone in the company to say, we deal with kidney stones, or we help bring down your blood pressure. These are, in my opinion, obvious problematic claims. Okay, so these elements of dehydration kind of stand by themselves on one side. On the other side of the equation, we have clinical trials and clinical data that presents our product as something that creates a rapid intracellular hydration event that lasts for longer as opposed to its blind counterpart, which is water. And there's a different response. There's a different experience, and we're able to show that clinically in a published study. So we are sitting in a place right now, and we're just kind of getting over the hump with some of this, as we're really getting all of our documentation put together, as Donna has been pressing. Make sure you have that sitting in your filing cabinet. We're doing that and have done that. But when it's this correlation between our product fixes dehydration and all these other things that are a result of dehydration. So being able to speak to hydration, there's a ripple of understanding as it relates to the things of the effects of chronic dehydration. So there's a connection there. And so it's really about trying to figure out, where is the line in that? What can be said, what can't be said, and in what type of circles can you say, and what are those flexibilities? Whether you're talking to an individual, whether you're talking on a Zoom call, whether they're partners, whether they're prospects, whether they're customers, that type of thing. So I think I've laid a little bit of a track for you here to respond to. But the first part is, these are the things that dehydration causes. We fix dehydration. What are your thoughts?
Brent?
Yeah, Brent?
Oh,
Well, I think Kevin's probably practices more with FDA issues than I do, but it sounds like talking about the specific things that hydration can treat or cure or alleviate. I think you're probably getting into some structure function issues there, where talking about hydration only, and this depends on what your research is too. Is the research of the product or the ingredients in the product?
The research is not, this is not an ingredient study. I'm very familiar with the industry. With one of the biggest frustrations for me is that someone says, well, I've got this product and it's got these 8 superfoods in it, and here's research on each one of those. So there's an assumption that when you put all those things together, it's going to do this amazing thing. So this is not an ingredient study. This is a study on the specific product, and then it does create a hydration event that is different from consuming water. So we're actually able to prove intracellular hydration. So how do we compliantly connect that, or the association, with the things that are effects of chronic dehydration?
yeah. So I would say probably the most frustrating maxim in this space is, just because it's true doesn't mean you can say it.
Yeah.
What is wrong with this world, Kevin? I'm sorry, but what is wrong with this world?
Yeah, I gotcha. Well, so let's just assume, for the sake of this conversation, that you can market the product as a dietary supplement. That's a much better scenario, because it opens up the biggest possible universe of structure function claims. I mean, there are 4 different categories of claims that can be made for dietary supplements. Structure function claims are the 2 most sexy, but there are also statements of general well-being. Well, the first are classic nutrient deficiency diseases like scurvy and beriberi. I don't think I've ever seen any company ever making any scurvy or beriberi claims. But yeah, general well-being, since I've been taking the product, I've got more energy than I've ever felt. I feel 20 years younger. I could play with the grandkids all day. Those are, general well-being claims, but the sexy ones, structure function, these are claims that describe the role or an effect of a nutrient, dietary ingredient on a particular structure or function of the body. What's important, and a massive mistake that so many marketers make, is they want to gravitate toward the opposite end of the claim spectrum. Okay, so here's the claim spectrum. On the one hand are disease claims, drugs or products, like I mentioned earlier, that are intended for use in the diagnosis, cure, treatment, prevention, or mitigation of diseases or the symptoms of a disease. Again, that's the exclusive purview of drugs. Dietary supplement claims, structure function claims, are supposed to be the opposite end. They're all about maintaining the body or a particular function of the body, a particular structure of the body in an optimal state of health. Okay, the opposite of drug and disease claims. But nevertheless, I would probably say 90% of product claims that I review for foods or dietary supplements want to gravitate toward the drug end of the spectrum. Some of the things you mentioned in that very, very long laundry list weren't disease states. For example, bad breath, that's not a disease. So you're welcome to make all the claims you want about bad breath. But quite a few of the claims you make, were. Now, whether or not the FDA would determine that you've crossed the line is determined by the overall net context and content of the entirety of a particular advertisement or a particular promotional piece. We don't look just at, and the regulators don't just look at one sentence, they look at everything in its totality. But I wanted to go back to a statement you made kind of early on. You said you want to get right up to the line. The problem is there's not necessarily a very super clearly defined line. And let me give you a better metaphor for that. I don't know if everybody in this call has been to the Grand Canyon. I love Grand Canyon National Park. It's a mind-blowing, spectacular place. Let's say you've been there multiple times, so you're familiar with where you need to park. As you're parking your vehicle, you see the sign that says this way to the rim, but as you're parking your vehicle, this pea soup thick fog rolls in. You can't even see the end of your hand. Okay. Under those circumstances, how close do you want to get to the rim? That's the environment in which we're operating.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a perfect analogy, actually. Very perfect. So when it comes to saying something along the lines of, hey, these are conditions that a lot of the public is experiencing. A lot of people experiencing, they're having tough time sleeping at night. They're on blood pressure medication. They don't have great circulation as a result of diabetes and that type of thing. And there's a correlation with dehydration and those particular things. There's causality there as it relates to dehydration. Now,
yep.
we don't really treat or prevent or cure any of those types of things, but what we do is we, let's say, fix the underlying cause, which is dehydration.
Right.
And the ripple of benefit that comes from that is exactly that. It's a blanket of benefits.
Yeah.
Is that statement, am I in the fog here, getting too close to the edge, or what?
Well, I'll give you a very typical lawyer-like answer. Definitely, maybe. But I'm okay. So it really does depend on a lot of different things. Let me go. You raised a whole bunch of issues. Could you go back and just hit me with that question again?
Yeah. So, Kevin, you know what's going on out there where a lot of people have health imbalances. They're struggling. They're dealing with, high blood pressure, dealing with diabetes, and not having good circulation issues. And one of the things that I was reading in research, Kevin, was that dehydration is a major component of those things. Yeah. Now, we don't treat or cure, those types of conditions, but what we do as a company is we fix dehydration.
Yeah. So let me just give you some strategies. Again, I see so many marketers make so many mistakes that are easily fixable. For example, wanting to go from point A to point Z in one giant step. This product prevents cancer. Okay, there's no debate that cancer is a disease. Okay, and a prevention claim for a disease, that's a drug claim. But one strategy to get companies to where they want to go is what I call, taking baby steps. So instead of going from A to Z in one giant step, we go from A to B, B to C, C to D, D to, et cetera, et cetera. So for example, and another strategy is what I call a play in 3 acts. So let's talk about arthritis. Okay, there's no question that arthritis is a disease. If we say, hey, this product helps prevent the onset of arthritis, that's a disease prevention claim. But let's talk about, well, what is arthritis? So act 1 in our play is arthritis. What is arthritis? What causes arthritis? What does it mean, in inflammation in the joints? Now, act 2, let's talk about what a healthy joint is. What makes a joint healthy? What maximizes healthy joint functionality? What nutritional ingredients contribute to a healthy joint, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we've got, a clear separation between act 1, act 2, and act 3 is kind of what I call the bridge, which is, it's pretty self-evident. It's like, obviously, an unhealthy joint is inconsistent with a healthy joint. So if we focus on keeping our joints healthy, if we give our joints what they need to be healthy, we're probably going to end up with healthy joints. So the problem is it takes a lot more real estate to do that. Going from point A to point Z is one sentence, okay? And often marketers don't want to spend the time and energy and real estate that's necessary to utilize that strategy. Another one would be, let's talk about cancer again, unquestionably disease. What is cancer? Well, it's basically cellular degeneration that, and so, well, how can that occur? Well, let's talk about what free radicals are and what free radicals do to healthy cells. So, free radicals, et cetera, et cetera. Let's talk about what antioxidants are. So another secret to making proper structure function claims, instead of talking about diseases, we talk about what the ingredients in the products do at the cellular or the molecular level. That goes a long way to setting up proper structure function claims. And
wow.
Yeah. So again,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So in 21 CFR 101.93, the FDA lays out its definition of disease, which is quite a bit more expansive than the medical professions. And it lays out 10 different categories of claims that it considers to be disease claims. And a lot of them really catch marketers and, normal people. I call everybody who's not a lawyer a normal person. They catch normal, no disrespect to you, Brent. They catch a lot of people by surprise.
Wow. You've just given a great gift right there with just looking at this as acts in the opera that we're creating here. And it's that separation and taking it step by step, because I was trying to figure out what's the most elegant way to tie these pieces together where you can get to the end where they understand what it's connecting to back in scene 1, scene 2, etc. So that is amazing. And
part of the challenge, or a big challenge in this is, and no disrespect to the field or field leaders, but the typical network marketing distributor, just doesn't understand all of this, and understandably so. And so it's really incumbent upon the company to, take a leadership role in this in terms of developing all of the appropriate claims that it can, providing those claims to the field, but making sure that the field in all of their promotional efforts are keeping their claims within the parameters of what the company has provided.
Right.
I'd be curious to hear what Brent's experience is, but allowing the field to develop their own promotional materials, to come up with their own claims, that is a fast track to a whole heap of trouble.
Yeah, with something like that, it surely is. And John, you touched on this at the very beginning. If you had 10 companies making the exact same claims, and one of those 10 is a network marketing company, I think we all know which one of the 10 is going to be scrutinized. So that's just the reality of the world we live in.
Right.
Yeah. Well, gosh, I think to Brent's point, a couple of years ago, Samuel Levine, who is now the director of the FTC's Consumer Protection Division, as well as Commissioner Rohit, I can't remember what his last name was, but they identified a couple of years ago in a University of Pennsylvania Law Review article what the FTC's Consumer Protection Division's top 5 priorities were. Number 4 was MLM companies, and specifically income claims and product claims. So the FTC has been pretty transparent to the, at least to our industry, to say, yeah, we have your number. You're one of our top 5. So,
and if it's anything that incentivizes people or gets them excited about a network business opportunity, they're not going to like it. They're going to find a way not to like it.
Donna, there's just no way we're going to have enough time to get to the FTC side of this equation, because I've got so many questions about that in terms of, how we're talking about the opportunity. I mean, I understand. I mean, one of the things that I think I'm reasonably decent at is kind of having a general sense, even in the fog, of where the line is, and either curing something or guaranteeing income. But there's a lot of other little twists and turns that I would love to ask you, Brent. I want to bring up another piece of this from the FDA side and the claims side, is that obviously testimonials and people telling their story are what drive our market, what drive our messaging and all that type of thing. And while we want to have the company tell us, you go from Act 1 to Act 2 to Act 3, and this is how we deal with that, this is how we keep this in the box, we're always going to have the rogue people that are just too excited about their blood pressure, and they have to tell their story, and they have to tell it to everybody, and they just can't stop. So, we know that happens. And so there's 2 parts to this, to the question is, one is, well, no, it's 3 parts actually, is what can we do within different contexts? What is the liability on the partner? What is the liability on the company? Those would be the 3 buckets. And so the first part of that is when it comes to telling our story, whether I am a partner talking to you, Kevin, for the very first time as a potential customer, potential partner, how many liberties can I take? We're on a phone call. Maybe we've known each other. What we do in that kind of environment, even if it's not compliant, nobody really knows unless they're recording it or something. I mean, I'm just talking real world. There's the legal world, and then there's what really happens, right, in these sessions. So I'm talking to you. That's one environment. I'm talking to you on a Zoom with a few other people. That's a different environment. I'm talking to you in front of a room where we're going to have a mix of things, what I can and can't say, and then what the ripple effect of that is to the partner and to the company.
Yeah. Well, I would certainly recommend that the company encourage and require the folks in the field to handle their claims consistently, irrespective of what the venue is. Yes, as a practical matter, a phone call, a one-on-one is a dramatically lower risk scenario than as is a Zoom call, which may be recorded by somebody, or a large public venue. But the challenge is that distributors are going to practice not only what's preached by the company and field leaders, but also what is actually practiced by them. So so if somebody goes, somebody's at a small meeting or small Zoom, 4 or 5 people, and all sorts of drug claims are made or unsubstantiated claims are made. It's pretty understandable that that newbie is going to think, well, gosh, this big time leader was making these claims. I guess it's okay for me to make them too. And I think that's pretty dangerous.
Right. So if I'm talking to you and I say, hey, I'm a partner, you're a prospective individual, maybe you're a friend, and I say, hey, my A1C went from, 15 to 6, or whatever the case may be. That's one thing. Probably not, that's my own personal story.
Right.
My own personal story. Is that okay for me to tell you?
Yeah. So there was in 1996, one of the FTC commissioners, he's not around anymore, but Roscoe Stark, gave a presentation at the National Infomercial Producers Association annual meeting called "The 10 Biggest Myths of Advertising." Myth number 5 is the "say it isn't so" myth. And the bottom line, and Brent mentioned this earlier, is a person's personal experience with a product, even though it may be 100% true, isn't substantiation. Okay, and the reason for that is because your your experience with the product is anecdotal. It's not supported by competent, reliable scientific evidence. We get into this a lot with doctors. You know, doctors are absolutely free to practice medicine any way they want, and a lot of them they'll do case studies with their patients. It's like, hey, I'm going to use this dietary supplement to help my patients with, you know, these different types of medical issues or disease issues. And gosh, I've done 1,000 case studies and we've gotten phenomenal results. And so can't I start making that claim? No, you have 1,000 nuggets of anecdotal evidence that will never, ever, ever, ever turn into competent, reliable scientific evidence. So yeah, doc, even though your 1,000 patients got these phenomenal results with the product, it again doesn't pass muster as substantiation.
That's because they haven't paid the pharmaceutical company enough to validate the study, because it's the economics of that information, not the information itself. So anyway, sorry, I just had to underscore that. I know that was a bit of a dig. Sorry about that, Kevin.
Yeah, no problem. Well, did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think that there's, you know, so in that environment, you know, I think that, yeah, you did. It's just, this just is so not black and white. It's so like, even on a clear day, you know, it's tough.
Hey,
And
John, one other question you asked was who's responsible, or who are the responsible parties? And if it's an improper claim, it's going to be the company and the person making the claim that's not with the company. So the FTC's made that pretty clear.
so
Yeah.
if,
Yeah, Brent, thank you for bringing that up. What's really interesting too is that in you know, section 255.1 subsection D, the FTC's written that, hey, to your point and to Brent's point, advertisers are subject to liability for misleading or unsubstantiated statements made through endorsements or failing to close. Advertiser may be liable for deceptive endorsements even when the endorser is not liable. Advertisers should, number one, provide guidance to their endorsers on the need to ensure that their statements are not misleading and to disclose the unexpected material connections. Two, monitor their endorsers' compliance. And three, take action sufficient to remedy non-compliance and prevent future non-compliance. So there's a burden on companies with respect to educating and training the field, diligently and proactively monitoring the field and correcting, present non-compliance and taking reasonable steps to prevent future non-compliance. So I think a lot of people probably aren't. This happened in I think the year 2009 was the last time the FTC amended its endorsements and testimonials regulation, and all this stuff got added in that particular iteration. So, FYI.
Is there a different standard when a partner talks to another partner who's already in the business, so to speak, than when a partner is talking to a potential customer?
No.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Wow. I think this is probably like, a multi-week session, than it is just one.
Oh, we've got some time, John, so you're okay. I know I wanted to find out, when a distributor crosses the line and the company provides compliance training, does that kind of wipe out what the distributor did? Or is the distributor and the company responsible for providing compliance training and also enforcing what goes on?
Well, the section that I just read, the FTC says that an advertiser may be liable if those things don't happen, but the opposite is also true. A company may be able to avoid liability even for a distributor's malfeasance if the FTC believes that it has fulfilled its obligations with respect to training, monitoring, and correcting.
You want to be able to demonstrate you are doing what the regulation said, what the guide says, as far as affirmatively monitoring and correcting any non-compliant behavior. Doing that obviously will leave you in much better stead than if you have no evidence that you've done that.
Right.
So let me ask the question this way, to add on to that, is that, clearly the regulatory bodies aren't going after everybody. It's like they wait for either a certain amount of infraction, they wait for a company to be worth X amount of dollars because they're going to get a better fine out of them or whatever the case may be. How do they cherry pick You know, how does something get on their radar and they say, okay, it's time, we're going after this one?
Good question. Um, and I don't know the answer to that, John, but there's different, I guess, rumors in the industry on how the FTC chooses its targets. But I'm not sure any of them can be validated. All I can say is I expect the FTC to be very aggressive with the next company they target after New York.
Well, and I invite Brent's commentary on my comments. I think we're going to see a dramatic shift in the FTC with respect to future enforcement actions. And the reason that I say that, and Brent can speak to these things better than I can, is that a couple of years ago, the FTC had a massive defeat handed to it by the U.S. Supreme Court in a unanimous 9-0 decision about its ability to utilize its former, I call it the silver bullet one-shot judicial assassination litigation strategy that the FTC had been using against network marketing companies since 1996. The sneak attack, the filing of a lawsuit, the ex parte TRO, the asset freeze, all that. The Supreme Court said, you don't have the authority to do that. It's like, I cannot imagine, the fallout within the FTC, the conversations that were had. And so I believe as a consequence of that, we saw the FTC dust off an old weapon. I kind of analogize its former litigation strategy to a 50 caliber sniper rifle, but it's dusted off a new strategy called the Penalty Offense Authority, which is, I would analogize to a Vulcan machine gun. It fires 6,000 rounds a minute. Not precise, not nearly as precise as that sniper rifle, but man, it can lay out a lot of bullets. And so that's already started to happen. In October of 2021, the FTC notified over 1,100 companies. Now, these weren't all network marketing companies. These were all sorts of companies that offered income opportunities. But 600 plus of the recipients were network marketing companies. Other companies included Amazon, Uber Eats, DoorDash, some franchisors, et cetera, with respect to income claims. And then the FTC did a similar thing. I think it was April of last year. I'm not sure about that, about product claims. And so now, to your point, the FTC is just waiting and watching and tallying up numbers for income claims, because every violation or every improper income claim, the potential penalty for each one is over $50,000. And so you've got a distributor out there making, let's say, 10 claims per week times how many distributors, 1,000 distributors, the numbers get insane in a very short period of time. And I think, I don't know when this is going to happen, but, in the near future, we're going to see the FTC starting to send out letters and bills to companies saying, hey, we've tallied up this number of income claims coming from your reps. Enclosed, please find our bill for $357 million and please remit payment in the next 30 days. So like I said, I think it's going to be a very, very different chapter when it comes to FTC enforcement actions in the future. Brent, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, the purpose of sending out these letters to every company in the country was, now the FTC's, when they come to collect, they're going to say, you're on notice. Remember, we sent you this letter. So they're doing that to satisfy a requisite requirement for them to move forward with this penalty enforcement strategy. And the only other thing I'd say about Kevin's comment about the Supreme Court ruling, that said, the ruling was the FTC did not have authority to seek monetary restitution from companies. And it also said you cannot seek injunctive relief against continuing conduct. So there is still a way for the FTC to come in and shut you down if it can convince the court that you are currently engaged in conduct. If you've received a cease and desist letter, or you had stopped the conduct before the FTC filed lawsuit, the FTC will not be able to get an injunction. But there's still a way they can come in and shut you down under certain circumstances. But to Kevin's point, that 9-0 Supreme Court ruling was definitely a win for the industry.
Yeah. So two other things, and I don't know, Donna, whether we want to get into any of the other, FTC type, questions or issues. I did have a couple questions there, but that might need to be for another time. So when it comes to one of the things that direct salespeople do is we compare. The way that we get our story forward is that we compare one product to another, one company to another. Is there any liability or compliance aspect to how we might talk about another company's product, another product in the marketplace, and using that as a mode of comparison for our product?
If you do not compare the other company accurately, you could easily be inviting a lawsuit.
Okay.
So that is my first comment to that.
Yeah, believe it or not, the FTC actually likes comparative advertising. But yeah, Brent's comment is absolutely well taken. Is that you better be 100% accurate in your comparison, and the claims that you're making. I remember, gosh, years ago, Dannon Yogurt. I can't remember which yogurt company did some comparative analysis with one of the other huge yogurt companies, but that definitely generated a lawsuit. Hey, I was wondering if we could address Ted Burke's claim. He writes, can I claim that we give the body what it needs to work in the way of hydration, as it was designed by our designer? Our product only hydrates the body properly on a continuous basis as long as it is consumed daily. Is this a legal claim? Yeah, just general hydration of the body, that is an appropriate claim for a conventional food. In the FDA's guidance document about conventional beverages versus liquid dietary supplements, the FDA even mentioned the word hydrate, but it's talking about the body. One of the claims that John made early on, I thought, and John, correct me if I misspeak, were about hydrating cells. So that's a different animal. That's a different type of claim than just merely hydrating the body. But yeah, there are no issues with respect to a hydrate the body claim.
Interesting. That's great to hear that. And that does, again, it's like we're finding statements that are just, they kind of go up, but they don't go over. And hydrating the body is true. We hydrate the body by creating intracellular hydration. So, but that is something that we can actually prove in a clinical trial. So that sounds to me like it's building scene 1 to scene 2 to scene 3. Is that correct or not?
Well, remember that maxim. Just because it's true doesn't mean you can say it. The clinical studies, potentially provide adequate substantiation for the claim. That's an FTC issue. But the FDA issue is this claim appropriate for this category of product? And the category of your product, is it a conventional beverage? Is it a dietary supplement? That's a bit of a moving target right now.
Okay.
Well, right now, as your product's labeled, it's a conventional beverage.
Right.
So is the word dehydration okay to say? The word dehydration?
Yeah, dehydration is not a disease.
Okay.
Like I mentioned, you can go to 21 CFR 101.93 and check out the FDA's definition of a disease. I had it up for a second. Here it is. A disease is damage to an organ, part, structure, or system of the body such that it does not function properly, e.g. cardiovascular disease, or a state of health leading to such dysfunctioning, e.g. hypertension, except that diseases resulting from official nutrient deficiencies, e.g. scurvy and pellagra, are not included in this definition. So there's disease.
Okay. So, and we know now that the reality of the correlations could be a problem if you're talking about heart attack or any other correlation to dehydration resulting in a heart attack or resulting in something else.
Yeah, so claims can either be express or implied. An express claim is pretty straightforward. This product prevents cancer. And implied claims are certainly more subtle, but they're claims nevertheless. Even though they're not expressly made, from the overall net context and content, of the advertisement or the claim, the reasonable and prudent prospect is led to believe that, hey, this product will prevent cancer. So, yeah, we've got to be concerned about both types of claims, express as well as the implied.
So in our situation, if we look up in medical journals the things that are all affected by hydration, and we talk about those as in Act 1, and then we talk about the things that hydrate the body, what's effective and what's not effective in terms of being able to hydrate the body, then there's an outcome to that in Act 3. And they draw their own association, and we presented it in such a way that it would be compliant.
I think it's definitely possible to do.
Okay.
Again, it's going to take a lot more real estate, but
Right.
it's doable.
Interesting. Well, I know that people's tendency is to want to say the least amount and have the biggest impact. So it's just a matter of kind of teaching people through that process.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, a big part of what Brent and I do is to help educate folks in the sales and marketing departments as to, how do you do this properly?
John had some questions about pain management and inflammation. We talked about those two words. I know inflammation can be problematic, but what do you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, the FDA has not been shy about cranking out warning letters about anti-inflammatory claims, even for dietary supplements. The FDA's position is inflammation is a disease, certainly a precursor to disease, no debate about that. And so anti-inflammatory claims are improper for even a dietary supplement. I'd say the best claim, anti-inflammatory structure function claim, would be something like, helps support a healthy inflammatory response. Okay, pain, again, there are lots of FDA warning letters on this one. Pain can go either way. If the pain is associated with a disease state, the FDA is going to treat, pain ameliorating claims as a drug claim. Joint, pain, painful joints. The FDA is going to argue, hey, the reasonable and prudent consumer would understand that to be an arthritis-related claim, even though arthritis is not mentioned, but joint pain generally, comes from arthritis. So that type of claim, they'd have a problem with. But again, pain from a non-disease state like overuse, overexertion, something like that, they won't treat that as a drug claim.
Interesting. So using words, I think this is where we learn to kind of swap out a few words. And one is helps, supports, balances, modulates,
Pains, optimize.
Those are the types of words that we can use to replace that as we kind of walk through that, as we navigate that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great start, but still, a claim like, helps optimize heart function after your heart attack, that's still going to be a problem.
I've got a question for you here. What, outside of this case study, just in general, I'd like to know what happens if a company waits to get in trouble and they are going to be issued a cease and desist or a temporary restraining order? How long does it take them to get back in business? And what damage can this do to a company rather than taking a proactive approach and teaching the distributors what to do? Have you seen companies do that, Kevin and Brett?
Well, the FDA and the FTC take very different approaches with respect to enforcement action. I'll let Brent speak to how the FTC deals with improper claims, and then I'll address how the FDA addresses improper product claims.
Okay.
Yeah, well, as Kevin mentioned, the FTC's notorious for, before the AMG case a few years ago, coming in and getting an ex parte order, TRO, and possibly an order appointing a receiver. So where the company is no longer even in charge of its operations before it knows it's been sued, because a receiver walks in with a court order, and that's a very hard thing to overcome. And we've seen, companies that did not survive that occurrence. Other cases like Neura, FTC did not take that approach. Neura was able to defend itself and achieved a favorable outcome. But Neura spent millions of dollars in legal fees in doing that. So the goal here is to prevent the FTC from, you want to stay off their radar, because even if you're ultimately successful, it's going to be very damaging to your business, to the time and resources that are required to, challenge or defend the FTC claim.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the FTC, sometimes we saw this a lot in COVID. As lots of companies were making COVID related claims about their products, the FTC actually sent out some courtesy letters or warning letters saying, hey, you're saying X, Y, and Z. We got some heartburn about that. You might want to rethink your claims and let us know what you're going to do. But more often than not, the FTC, if they come after you, they want a pound of flesh, and they will get a pound of flesh before they let go. The FDA is vastly more reasonable and polite. The most typical response from the FDA with respect to what it considers to be improper product claims is a warning letter. That is a regulatory action, okay, but it's the lowest possible level of regulatory action other than just a courtesy letter. So, so it is a regulatory enforcement action. The FDA is saying, hey, we've got some heartburn about these claims that you're making, and they list them out with great detail. They explain why they have heartburn, and you got 21 days to tell us what you're going to do. And, the vast majority of the time, the FDA is spot on in their analysis. Occasionally, very rarely than not, I had a client that had some weight loss products, and it was making appropriate weight loss claims, help support your body's, ability, to, properly manage weight, no anti-obesity claims or anything like that. And the client met with their regional office in Denver. There were 10 people from the FDA there, but we got them to acknowledge that, yeah, that's not an improper claim. It is totally appropriate for dietary supplements, but that doesn't happen very often.
And Kevin, you work with the FDA a lot more than I do, but my experience with the FDA is if you tell them what corrective action you're going to take and by what date you're going to take it, they will usually say that's fine, acceptable, and move on. Not so with the FTC.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now they do follow up. The FDA does continue to monitor to make sure that companies did what they said they were going to do. If they did, great. If they didn't, then things can get ugly.
Yeah, for sure.
So they still have that ability to do the ex parte, go before the judge, get the receiver?
In certain situations, their possibility of doing that is more limited than it used to be, but it's still possible under certain circumstances. Yes.
Okay, I didn't understand that. That's interesting.
Well, and one difference between the FDA and FTC is that the FDA can, if it wants to, pursue certain violations criminally, not only civilly but also criminally.
Didn't know that either. Wow, interesting. John, what more questions do we have? We're going to wrap up in about 7 minutes. We're over a little bit, but I know we could have a whole nother show on the income claim side of it, but
yeah, I think there would definitely be some things there. I think that one of the things that I think we already kind of talked about that is just taking some of the information and how we're preparing it and making kind of lifestyle type statements. I think that the clarity for me coming out of this is, are we going down the supplement route or are we going down the conventional beverage route? And really trying to create some definition, within the category, knowing what track we're. So it sounds to me like, a company has to choose. Is it this track or is it that track? But it's not both tracks.
Absolutely. Right. All right. Well, we have many other things to talk about. We'll get to in another show. I'll tell you, I know we wanted to talk about infomercials and how they get away with it, and the definition of an affiliate. Can we touch on that before we hang up? The definition of an affiliate versus a distributor and the difference between the affiliate model versus the MLM model with regard to compliance. Do affiliates have the same do they have the same rules that a regular distributor has?
Great question.
Brent?
If we're talking about advertising, If the affiliate is receiving any benefit from the company, which could even be a free product to try and promote, then they are subject to the testimonial guidelines, the same as a distributor would be.
Very good. Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Spot on. All right. And let's see, we've covered that. Boy, we've spent a lot of time on this. The next show, we're going to talk about Neora. So on July 23rd, Deborah Hines from the Neora will be here. And that is going to be an incredible show too. I think this one was very interesting. So, John, do you have any other questions for the guys?
You know, I think this is a continuing journey. I didn't think we were going to get this elephant eaten in one session. So I really appreciate the time you've taken, Kevin and Brent. I would love to come back and do more of a FTC centric discussion, because I think there's other things that I'd be very curious about, just in terms of where the regulators are on the promotion income side of our business, and what happens with auto ships and compensation plans, and how those things all work together, just to make sure, that I have a good understanding, of how to represent those things. And we'll these are always defining moments. Whenever we're working with a company, we're trying to feed back to them, make sure all the bases are covered. I think that we want to move from a reactive kind of a mindset to a proactive, position. Monitoring is something that you've talked about, Donna, in terms of needing to have that done. So the more that we can display, not just as a company, but also as individual partners, that we're doing those processes, we're teaching that. And when we're, as we're growing our teams, that we're focused on those types of activities as well. So I think I will dispense of my previous philosophy, which was do it anyway and then beg for forgiveness afterward. I'll start to think about it a little bit differently, and maybe deploy some of these boundaries here as I move forward in business. So thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, Donna.
You're very welcome, John. Thanks for being on the show. The Direct Selling Show, transparent education from attorneys and direct selling experts. We'd love for you to come to the next one. We thank you, Brent, for joining us today. I look forward to talking
Enjoyed
more.
it.
Kevin, good job always. I learn something every time you talk. It's just amazing. So I love it. Let's see. Oh, real quick, gonna tell you a quick story about a company that did not recognize compliance value real quick. The company decided to change their compensation plan without an attorney, and taught the distributor force how to explain the new compensation plan. And it was recruitment based. So the regulators started scrutiny immediately. And even the distributors were questioning the company's motives, and they still didn't get it right. And as we say in the industry, poof, they were gone. So it wasn't even 6 months and they had some troubles. But thank you for joining us. Remember, this is the Queen of Compliance, and I'm here on the show every day, once a month. If you think the show should be twice a month, put it in the chat. We're considering expanding the show and having it be just a little bit more than that. Brett, thank you for your knowledge about the industry. Kevin, thank you for teaching me again. John, you're awesome. You're an awesome teacher. I want to come to something you do just so I can learn more. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. This is a wrap on this show. Thanks, guests, for being there.